Girl, you the man, and she love me when I'm in it, and she never be pretending. Nothing that's real. She gon' tell you what she.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to the E Spot with Camille. And I am your host today, Camille Cower. Actually, I'm your host every day, but I am so super excited to bring to you Raleigh native Christopher Terrell, he has this new song that I'd rather him describe. So I'm just go ahead and bring him in so we have that opportunity to talk to him for as long as possible. So Christopher Terrell, he's a singer, he's a songwriter. He is a Raleigh native who is doing it on a big scale. He went to New York, made it big, and came back and is trying to bring Raleigh back on the map. So I'm so excited to have you. Cannot wait to hear more
Happy
about
to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being my guest. So last minute, I must say I appreciate your willingness to jump and come today.
Right.
So thanks again.
Again, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Now, I'm just to make sure because I've had issues in the past with Facebook. I just want to make sure everyone can hear us and can see us because on my end it says error loading. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it did say that at the beginning,
Yeah.
but I think it's because you weren't live yet. I'm not sure, but I see it's working now.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure before we got too far along, and next thing you know, like didn't hear it, couldn't see it, couldn't watch it.
Right.
So tell us from the very beginning, Raleigh native, how did you make it big? How did you get your song on Tyler Perry's Daddy's Girl? Start us
Uh,
from the very beginning.
okay. Well, I don't know if I made it big, but I made it. I made it to a nice, decent level. A partner of mine, we started a group here in Raleigh, and in like '91, and we moved to New York. Before doing that, we had a friend of ours who was our road dog. His uncle at the time managed Teddy Riley, so he took us to meet Teddy down at Virginia Beach, and they liked us. And his uncle actually influenced us to move to New York to go and, he said, find yourself and lose yourself to find yourself. That was his words. Harv Austin is his name, and we really did that because we lost ourselves. Got to New York and really didn't have the financial means to really stay up there, but my past of dealing with a lot of people in the streets who were helping me out financially. I met some people in traveling back and forth trying to pursue this, and a guy named Pete Cardle actually took me in. His wife was a cop. He was DOT, but he was a street guy, and that was like a front. And he basically looked out for us, housed us for a little while, and this female I had met in Virginia Beach at the time, because we snuck away from Harv and Teddy and them and went and hung out in Hampton, Virginia with my homegirl, Karen Sampson. And she turned me on to this other female that was a friend of hers, and we got real cool. And she ended up coming to New York that same summer doing an intern at one of the record labels. So that's really how it all began. And during that time, we were getting, we had gotten this guy named Brian Leach, who's a big name in the industry, interested in us. And, that link led us to RCA. And one afternoon, I got a call, and we were supposed to be going to meet, Brian, and answer the phone, ask for Terrell, because everybody in New York calls me Terrell. Asked for Terrell, and it was Puff. And Puff was like, I heard a lot about you guys, young lady told me about you guys and whatnot, and I need you guys to come down and see me. And the time he wanted us to come, we already had another meeting scheduled. So I was like, nah, Puff, we can't do it. So hung up the phone, and he called me back like 5 minutes later. Like, he said, yo, B, you know who I am? I got Mary J. Blige and everything. He started doing the Puff on me. And I ain't really know him like that. This was, like I said, this early 90s. This is before he really blew. He was working for Andre at the time. Yeah. And so he was like, yo, if y'all all that, come and meet me at 1775 Broadway, which was, where Uptown Records was. So of course, when he started kicking everything, I was like, yo, we gotta go, right? So we left, got down there to meet him, and like I said, I had never even seen this dude before. I had heard the name, but I'd never even really seen him. So, and mind you, we were new to New York, right? Still getting our foot wet, but still getting our foot wet, and a lot of people was kind of coming at us at the time. As soon as we got there, we were North Carolina boys, me and Adrian, and we could sing. So it was like we were grabbing a lot of attention. So anyway, got down there, and this one dude who saw us had just met us like the day prior with my old with our manager at the time, and he was like, "Nah, Puff, they good. They good. Don't even, they good already." And Puff was like, "Man, get out of here." So he was like, "Yo, y'all come to my office." So went in there. We played him this whack demo that we had because it was super whack, but it was all we had. Little cassette tape. And Puff looked at me and he was like, "Yo," he said, "Anybody ever tell you sound like R. Kelly?" No, he said, "What?" He said, "How do you feel about R. Kelly?" I was like, "Yeah, we like R. Kelly." This was before all this craziness going on, but yeah. It's like, yeah, he said, "Yeah, your voice reminds me of him." And anyway, he wanted to hear something live, so we hit the national anthem, which was like what people did back then, so we sang the national anthem probably for about 30 minutes, we sang it long and slow, right? Right. So he kind of offered us a deal on the spot. But his phone rang while we were talking to him. And he looking at me while he's talking, and he was like, "Yo, Terrell, the phone is for you." And it was my man calling, like, "Yo, B," he was pissed, like, "Well, what y'all doing?" So that's how it really started right there. You know what I mean? Then he called Andre, and we met Andre for the first time. It was just, that's how we started getting our footing in, to make a long story short, that's how it all went down.
That's amazing.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, like looking back and you telling the story, do you ever think, wow, I can't believe he called me back? Because he could have very easily like, oh, on to the next. You know what I mean? Like you really have to have the talent, but also have those relationships strong enough that they're willing to take that risk on you and willing to make that second call after you weren't interested for it.
Right.
It's just wow. Like,
yeah, and it really wasn't that I wasn't interested. It was just I had another meeting going on, and it's not like that meeting was a bad meeting either. It was just like I gotta go meet with these guys. Right. So we felt that we needed to go do it, and that's what happened.
And I gotta respect that as well, because so many times people will go for the big name and not realize that they had previous engagements, or maybe they already made it an appointment. And so I respect both sides of that story.
Right. It went. And we were young, immature. We didn't really know a lot going on. Everything was happening kind of fast, and we didn't know which way to turn. We was just trying to have a roof over our head at the time, because we didn't really have anywhere to stay. I think at that time we were staying with my ex's grandfather in White Plains, New York. When we got that call, we had been up there probably for about maybe 3 weeks.
Okay.
So it was crazy.
So from that point, how did you get to with writing and songwriting and so on? What do you think were the skill sets that kept you apart? Like for so many people who are interested in getting into the music business, there's so many hurdles they have to jump. There's so many different things they need to know. And what do you think were your main foundations that you had that helped get you to those points? Because even to get into the rooms with the people you got in the room with, what do you think got you there?
I mean, they were God sent, I can't say it's anything that we did, because it's always networking, somebody making a call for you on your behalf. But just being, at that time, we would sing at a drop of a dime. Anybody asked us to sing, we were on it, like, let's go. And, our skill with writing, it grew. I always thought I could write anyway, but once I really started working on my craft, and the feedback that I would always get, we realized that we were good at what we did. And that's I think that's one of the first compliments that Puff gave us. He was like, "Yo, man, you guys are dope writers." And that's how, Heavy D, he gave Heavy D my number because of that, you know, and that was another wild call I got out the blue. So it was like, you know, people recognizing your skills, because what happened was, you know, just to kind of rewind the tape a little, we didn't go with Puff's offer. We ended up going another direction. And later on, that direction really fell through for us at last minute after about 9 months. So when we went back to Puff, he had just signed Big and everybody. So he had a roster, and he was like, you know, as he would say, he said, B, you know, I'm the hypest man in this business, you know? Right. He said, but look, my plate is full, but you know, I got love for y'all. Give me a number and I'm gonna get back to you, because y'all dope, whatever. So the next day, I'm working at this temp job. You know, like I said, we hustling, we working during the day, studio at night, and this was our life. So I got a call at work, and I didn't have my own line at the time. And this lady named Sandra, you know, she was a wild lady. And she was like, Chris, somebody named Heavy D on the phone for you, you know? So I was like, what? So everybody was like, oh, look, here we go. You know, this superstar dude getting calls like that. And I thought it was a prank call, of course. So I go to the phone, and he's like, yo, this is Hev. And I was like, yo. So he ended up taking us under his belt and getting us with Tony Dofat. And that's how we really started writing. You know, we started working with Dofat, which is, you know, platinum producer who worked for Puff and all, Hev and all that, you know. So that's really how we started our grind with our writing skills, working with that dude.
Wow. Now, I mean, for some of the people who may not be familiar with your discography, I'm sorry, in my head I keep thinking filmography, because I've been interviewing so many people on the film side, so I have to stop myself and say discography instead of filmography. Right. But can you share some of the different songs that you've written on? Because it's a long list. Like, can you share some?
Well, I don't have a lot of, you know, a long list. I've written a lot of songs, right?
Right.
But the main song that I always, you know, that goes back, that really charted, was the song that I did with Tyler Perry on Daddy's Little Girls soundtrack. It ended up being like number 4 on Billboard. Anthony Hamilton, Music Soul Child, and Jaheim did a version of it it was called Struggle No More, the main event. And that really took off. And I actually had 2 songs on that soundtrack. One Anthony Hamilton did alone. He did a version by himself. And, you know, from what I'm told, that was one of Tyler Perry's favorite songs on the album, you know, and it was a star-studded album, and, you know, I got blessed to be on there. So, yeah, that's really, you know, the main one that really touched everybody.
Now, with just thinking of that project, did you had already, I'm sorry, I'm tumbling over my own words. Did you already have that song written, or was it written exclusively for the film?
Well, what happened with this particular one, and I can tell you, it was already written. I had just had my youngest daughter, and living in Brooklyn at the time. And I don't know if you know, but New York is very expensive, right? So we had decided to buy a home in Staten Island, and I think they wanted us to put down like 30 G's. At the time, that was a lot for me. And my wife's mother was like, just come and stay with me for a couple of months. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. You know, she said, y'all just save up some money and got your house. And so I ended up going there, and I think I stayed there for about 4 weeks. I'm just not a person that can stay in somebody else's home for a long period of time. Yeah. So I ended up getting a townhouse out there in Staten Island. And but while I was in that basement, I wrote this record called Struggle No More. And I was working with Steve Solar at the time, who is like the mix king for New York of hip hop. So Steve Solar is an Italian guy who does crazy mixes on all hip hop records like Nas and Mobb Deep and 50 Cent, and, you know, you name it, he's done it. and he got into producing, and I had been working with Havoc from Mobb Deep, and he ended up wanting to work with me. Like, listen, Terrell, I got some tracks I want you to jump on, and so I ended up writing probably about 5 to 10 songs with him. And that particular one, I wrote while living in that basement just because of what I was going through mentally. And so when I was asked to come to the writing team for Tyler Perry's movie, and they explained to me what the movie was going to be about, Daddy's Little Girls, I was like, I already got a record for that. And they was like, no, you don't. I was like, I do. And when the guy heard the song, he was like, wait a minute, let me make a call. And so that's how that happened.
Okay. I can show that song real quickly.
Yep.
Like, I don't want Terry, excuse me, now I can't even say his name. Tyler Perry's team to come after me so very quickly.
Right.
I can't afford their lawyers, so
Yep.
still a little bit of it.
Yep, that's it right there.
Yeah, that was amazing. So how did you feel when you finally heard their version of your song?
I
Were
mean, I
you
was
like
excited.
excited, proud? Yeah.
Yeah, I was excited. I had already knew Anthony Hamilton was recording it, but then when I found out they were doing that, Jaheim and Music Soul Child was jumping on the track too, I was like, yeah, yeah. So that was real big for me. I was really excited. I wasn't expecting that. Because initially as an artist, you want to do stuff yourself, right? You get that mental, but then it's like, nah, they can make more bread than me. So yeah, let them do that. So and that's what I try to push other people too who write, because you never know, when you're writing, publishing is there. That's money that comes continuously. I still get checks today, for publishing for just that record alone. I mean, it doesn't stop. As long as the movie's on, I get checks. If they play it on the radio, I get checks. So it's something that, artists who write should never stop doing. I mean, if anything, I would stop being an artist before I stop writing.
Okay.
Because it's, that's where all your money comes from. Well, a lot of the money comes from anyway, the majority.
No kidding. Now,
Unless you're touring.
well, and no
Mhm.
one's touring now,
Correct.
and who knows when that will go back to normal. And so I want to talk a little bit more, because we got a little bit about your singing and your songwriting. Well, let's talk a little bit about your dadajuring as well before we get into more and talked about more
Absolutely.
personal topics. But I wanted to make sure we talked about the fact that you also manage your son as well as career. So
Absolutely.
tell us a little bit about that.
So my son, his artist name is Chris Fee. He just, and it's funny because I knew my son could sing years ago, and I didn't want to push him where people say, "Well, you're trying to live your dream through your son," right? So he enjoyed it, and I think about 3 years ago, or more, a little more than 3 years ago, he came to me and said, "Dad, I want to try it. I want to give it a shot." And when he said that, of course, I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." Right?
I've been waiting,
I
right?
got
Yeah.
excited, and I started working with him. His vocals changed, his voice changed. He went through that, so he was start sounding like alfalfa, you
Oh
know.
no.
So we had to put him on hold for a while, and I ended up going to New York and got with one of the producers that I worked with from the 90s named Magic Reed, and he was like, bring him to the studio. And got him there, and he played a track, and I wrote the song like right on the spot. The one that you're showing right now, I think I wrote that in about 15 minutes. And he dropped it, he killed it, and we was like, okay, I think this is a go. And from then on, like, me and Magic just partnered up and said, let's get it, let's go, let's push him, and that's what we did.
You girl, the way you make me feel. I just wanna love you, girl. The way you keep it real. I know I can trust you, girl. You my lady, we don't mess with no thoughts. Instagram models wanna take your spot. But I don't want nobody but you, girl. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the young Chris Fee right there.
yeah.
He just turned 18 last week, so he doesn't
happy
quite look the
belated
same.
birthday. Happy belated birthday.
Yeah. I hate he couldn't be here.
Oh, understandable. Gotta take care of business. We're gonna bring you both back together.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Separate. We'll figure it out later. But
yeah, he actually just dropped his latest single called Desire, which is fire right now. And I saw on Spotify alone, I think last Tuesday, I think he had about 300 listeners each month.
wow.
And I think now, if I'm not mistaken, well, as of yesterday, I want to look now, but as of yesterday, it was almost 1,600 listeners each month. So within like 4 or 5 days, his numbers went crazy over this song called Desire. And he actually produced it himself. And then Magic came and put his little sauce up on it to make sure it's right. He wrote it himself. It's fire. So we're actually supposed to shoot the video for that tomorrow. We're supposed to shoot it last week. It's been crazy because with the COVID stuff going on.
Right.
We had a COVID scare at the location that we were potentially supposed to shoot. So we couldn't do it, of course. And now tomorrow with this rain, we're trying to figure it out. We may just have to do a different type of treatment. So right before this call, that's why I was on with the director trying to get that taken care of, because I don't want to postpone it again. I want to get it done, even if we have to just change the treatment for it. But we're shooting that video tomorrow. So wish us well with that. Desire, y'all, go get that. It's crazy.
Like I put it in the comments for Apple Music.
Yeah, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Google Play Store, any way you can get music, it's popping. It's crazy because we were in getting out the parking lot last Friday, and I was on another call. My wife was like, "Do you hear that?" Somebody was blasting the song, and there was this guy on a motorcycle, just blasting the song. It was crazy. I was like, "Yeah, that's a good sign. That's a good sign."
Oh,
So
awesome.
we're excited. We're excited about this record. And plus we have another song that we're shooting that's on his album called Sun Rays. That's we're shooting another video for that in the next week as well.
So when your son comes to you and says, I want to do music as well, from what point does it go from, okay, let's see if you're really committed and this is not just a hobby for you just because you see daddy do it, you want to do it, to a point of, okay, you really have the talent. I need to put the energy and time into making this happen for you.
Well, that part is a molding process. Like I said, he just turned 18, so he was about 15, when he decided, 14, 15-ish, when he decided, okay, this is what I want to do. So immaturity, but at the same time, my son was never like a silly boy, and he grew up fast because he was involved in a lot of situations where he had to grow up fast. The streets are not friendly out here, especially when you're trying to do something or do the right things. So he had to quickly learn the streets and adapt, and because I didn't teach him the street life. I dealt with that, so I was trying to keep him from that. But as a black young kid, you're gonna learn it regardless. You just try to keep him from it as long as you can. And so he got a big whiff of what that looks like. but at the same time, he was able to get focused and stay focused on trying to make it happen, even though I get on his case because I did this and I know what it takes to get to where I would like him to go, and I see his potential, but you have to want it and you have to live it, you know, and sometimes, you know, by me being in my position, I know I've had dudes be like, yo, well, is he just in his own thing of thinking like, well, my dad is going to take care of me and look out, or is he trying to make provisions for himself? And so those are the things that he had to start learning how to do. And I still get on his case, like, but now it's a little different because he wants to do certain things that I don't necessarily would like him to do, but I have to let him be his own artist at the same time, in giving him the pros and cons of these decisions that he may make. You know, certain posts that he might post that I may not particularly like, man, why you? And he's like, Dad, you know, like, would you really do that if I wasn't your son? Would you be? No, I probably wouldn't. Right. But so those are the things sometimes I have to differentiate because he's, you know, I still have to treat him like an artist, but at the same time, he's my son. So I'm looking at like, dude, what? Come on, man. That may not have been the move. Or, you know, but I have to allow him to make his errors as well because I'm not going to always be in his presence.
Right. Now, so tough when you're trying to steer the car away from the embankment, but they're determined to go towards the embankment. And then you're like, well, you're going to learn to drive the car. I have to let you drive the car. So
Absolutely.
I get it. Now, you guys did a song together that has gotten a lot of traction, and I want to make sure that people hear it. So I'm just going to, again, take myself.
Yes. So this is the raw version that I had done.
So wrote this song.
I was going to say, I'll get your version of what you were going to say first before I play it.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this is the raw version I had done. So this is not the version that I'm releasing yet.
Oh, okay.
We enhanced the musical version of this,
That one.
which will be released. It's set to release Friday, June 19th, which is our official Freedom Day. But this is the raw version of that footage. And I could share that link with you for the finished song on YouTube, because right now it's only on YouTube, available to people to listen to.
Give me a minute. I'll get that one, because there was two to choose from, and I chose the one with your image in it, but I can get the other one.
Well, it's fine. You can play this. I'm fine with that. Whatever you.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
With that. Oops. The other one's playing in my ear. All right, I'm gonna move myself out so I can hear you, but you won't be able to hear me. But
Gotcha.
Just so we have bigger screen for that one.
Okay.
Actually, the time I ever recorded a song crying. But long story short, you know, Mama, I can't breathe.
Oh, Mama, please help me. I'm doing the best I can. I know I'm not a perfect man. I hope one day they'd understand the struggles of a black man. But they don't even wanna know. They treat us worse than animals. They think we're all criminals. That's just how the story goes. And every time I turn around and all one black man is dead, nothing that he did can justify the way to beat him till he bled. Stop resisting is the term they use when they beat you upside your head. With a knee in your neck and on your back, I'm giving out a breath. Mama, I can't breathe. Oh.
taste of what it is. I got to make it home again. It's a black conversation. The do's and don'ts won't get you stopped saying unless you're better off. But when you're dealing with a dirty cop, results can be good life laws. Every time I turn around and all on black men is dead. Nothing that he did can justify the way he beat him till he bled. Suffocation is the term they use when they're beating you beside your head. With a knee in your neck and on your back, I'm giving out a breath. I can't breathe. Oh no. Why do they hate me? Oh yeah. Before you attack me, ask about my family, 'cause they really love me. 3 kids and a wifey. To them, I'm a king. To me, they are everything. I just wanna make it home, please. Mama.
Man, I'm so glad you made that song. It's
Oh boy.
definitely pulls on the heartstrings.
Yeah, that I mean, I got chills just listening to it again. You know, God gave me that song in the middle of the night. I had said to myself before, I said I'd like to write something about it. And this particular night, I couldn't sleep. And Magic, my friend, the producer, he had sent me about 100 tracks. Like, yo, Terrell, get the writing, man. We gotta, do some things and get this catalog to some people, whatever. And I'm flipping through some of the tracks, and I heard this reference track that I liked, and I was like, well, I can probably use this to write to. And I'm listening to it, laying in the bed actually, and I'll never forget, it was like 2:57 in the morning, and I said, I need to watch this video of George Floyd, because I could never watch that whole thing. I saw clips and I said that was enough for me, because I was a victim of police brutality myself in New York City, and so I get really emotional when watching stuff like that. It bothers me,
Right.
and I started to watch this footage, and it was 9 minutes of torture. And by the time I finished, I was in tears. So I got up out of my bed. I didn't even go to this room. I went downstairs, and I was walking in circles. And I had my earphones on. I'm just walking in circles, like, God, give it to me. And so I started writing around 3:30. I finished up about 5:30 in the morning. I laid down about 20 minutes later, and that evening when I finished working and doing whatever I had to do, it might have been, I think it was the next evening or 2 days later, maybe, I decided to go ahead and record it. And what you just showed, that was the end results of that. And I called my man Magic and was like, look, and I'm still in tears, because when I recorded that right there, you couldn't see the tears, but I was still crying. And I hit him up and I was like, yo, dude, hey man, I don't know what you're doing, but you got to hear this record that I just did to this reference track. And this was around 11:30 at night. And, of course, he always, like, he wants me to do this anyway, because he hypes me up like, yo, man, what are you doing? I need you to write these records for me. And so I think that morning, the next morning when I woke up, I saw they had sent me a text around 3:00 in the morning, like, I got it, right? So I looked at my email and saw that he sent a finished version. Like, he stayed up all night finishing it for me.
Oh wow.
So he pulled the files off my, because the way we work, the way he set up my lab is, he can actually go into my my hardware and get my files when I give him the access to do so. So he pulled the information from my desktop, pulled all my files in, and he just did his own thing, man. And the song came out pretty crazy. Even there are some elements that I still would like in there, and I was just talking to him about this yesterday because I'm getting feedback like, you know, we like the other version too, the raw version.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do something else with that reference track as well. But he enhanced it, and it's in my opinion, he took it to a whole nother level musically. Of course, it wasn't mixed until he did that, and now it sounds amazing. And I see it's a lot of people sharing it, and I'm getting contacted from it. And I was hoping and praying that people would share it, and hopefully it becomes a part of that movement of what we're dealing with, because people don't really understand. And when I say people, I mean people outside of us, even some of us. You see these some of these comments sometimes where, you know, that person like this Candace Owens lady, I'll leave it at that. And I'm sorry I even mentioned her name to give her more light. But you have people like that who does, you know, would rather dog somebody who, because none of us are perfect. You know, only person who walked this earth I know perfect was, you know, Jesus Christ himself, right? So we all have flaws, but you don't bring them up when somebody else murders him or her. You know, what is your objective of doing that?
It's
You
not
know,
like the police officer knew any of that
correct.
information when he proceeded the way he did. So
Correct. So you can't justify these killings, even though they try and they get away with it. 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, they've gotten away with it. But we learn, and then they call us animals. And we all know all police officers aren't this way, right? We have family, friends that we know. We've met good officers, but that's not who we're talking about here. We want people to take accountability for them beating us for no reason and killing us when it's not justifiable. When you wouldn't do the same for a Caucasian or a white person. And we know it's not like we watch them all the time beating up females, young females. Like, you're punching them. You're punching females. You're beating up females. You don't even want us to beat our kids. You'll arrest us, but you go and beat us to oblivious, and it's okay. And you get away with it. You guys beat Rodney King for 15 minutes, 9 of you, and then they made it seem like he was on PCP, and they later proved that that wasn't the case. I mean, this has been going on for years, you know, and it's, you know, I get emotional when I talk about this stuff.
Honestly, this is the place
Because,
for it. Feel free, because I
you
mean, we're
know,
all
it's
dealing
like,
with this. We're all railing with it, and for you to have a firsthand experience with it and to write the song, like it just brings out the humanity in us, and that's the whole point of this being live, is being able to have this live interaction to find out what motivates you, and just hearing your
right,
story. I mean, it just adds more to it in the sense of now we feel we get a piece of you through your music, but now we even get more to hear how much this touches you. Because so many times
right,
we're thought to believe it's an isolated incident. Oh, we must have did something for them to react that
right,
way with us. And we're seeing time and time again, it didn't matter how good, how bad, it's the same reaction.
right.
So
And it's the
it's so
same
crazy.
reaction. Like, even with this new situation that happened in Atlanta,
Right.
you know, and I know we all know they're gonna say, well, he was fighting with them,
He
right?
ran. Yeah.
But he ran,
That's not a
right?
difference.
When you're running away, I'm no longer a threat, right? And even when they're gonna say, okay, he turned around and pointed that stun gun at the guy, it won't kill you.
It sure will.
And it's 2 of y'all. And they shot him in his back anyway. So these things like would never happen to a white person. It just doesn't happen that way. And
And if it does, they get justice. In the sense
correct.
of,
And they
like,
get justice.
they'll lose their job. He'll go to court. Like, there's steps for that. But I must say, like, people will so quickly put, oh, he must have did something, or they're like, well, if you follow the American dream, if you listen to the officers, if you do everything the right way, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and so on. And we're seeing time and time again that these young men and women did that, or or some of them didn't, but does that matter? Did they need to pay for it with their life? And it's them,
Exactly.
and they're so quick to make those excuses. Or when it does happen in the white community, oh, it's because he was poor, he was a drug addict, he was homeless. That should not matter.
Absolutely not. Not at all. Absolutely not at all. And when you have systemic racism starting from slaves that when they freed us, quote unquote, and they knew we didn't have a pot to piss in, they knew we couldn't get income or anything like that, and they started these policing. So if you stole a candy bar, you got 10 years, on that train track, chain gang. You part of the chain gang now for little things just to eat. And they set it all up. Yeah. So when you don't have anything, and they didn't give us those 40 acres and a mule, how else did they expect us to even survive except by trying to get it by any means necessary? And they just put us in a position of poverty from the beginning of time. And we are still there in so many different ways and different formats. Look at our prison system right now. I mean, I just had a conversation with my son last night. He was visiting my oldest daughter, and he decided that he wanted to, and like I said, he just turned 18. He decided he wanted to come this way, which is like a 2-hour drive at like 11:30 at night. And my conversation with him, and I thought about it afterwards, and it's crazy. I said, dude, the cops are out. That was my first thing, that you don't need to drive back in this rain. The cops are out. You don't need that, and that's our conversation all the time. Whenever I think he needs to hear something like that, just to wake him up and be vigilant, I have to do it, especially if he's with some other friends. If it's 2 or 3 of you guys, oh man, bro, be careful with it, because they don't treat you the same, and that's the scary part. We have fear of it. We don't just have a conversation and say, hey, don't worry about the cops. They're on your team, which is the way they put it out there of what it should be, right? Yeah. They should work for us, protect and serve, but we don't look at them that way. We may call them for 911 for crazy incidents, but the majority of the time, we have fear. I know I do. My heart starts beating fast every time I get pulled over. Yep. I'm carry concealed, so I even get a little bit more paranoid because I carry. Yeah. So carried, yeah. I have to think even and be more wise with how I speak with the cop and how we deal, because like Philando Castile, he told them I'm licensed to carry, and they shot him up anyway. So we really don't know exactly how this cop is going to respond to anything we say. He could be in a bad mood. He could be, feeling a certain way, or he could just have that hate in his blood that we've seen over and over again in a lot of these videos, beating us for no reason at all. Even with, like I said, what happened in Atlanta, if you watch that whole video, which I did, the guy had already said, hey, I admit I had some drinks, but I've been parked right here. Give that man a ticket. He said he would walk home. Give him a ticket. Let's be a little smart here. Use some wisdom,
wasn't
common
driving
sense.
at the time. He realized
let him walk home.
Driving. Yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to justify that he tried to run. However, it wasn't worth you killing him. Would you have done that to Taylor or Tyler? No, you would not have. And that's just the bottom line. They don't treat us the same way or even look at us the same way. And it's a sad situation. And it's, and we're really tired of it. And, I know that people complain about, burning the cities down and things of that nature, burning your own community down. Mm-hmm. And, I don't justify, uprisings, and they call them riots, right? I don't justify, the whole uprising. But however, I understand. And we also have to know that when they say that we burn down our own communities, mm-hmm. these communities are not ours. We live there. It's a difference. If they were ours, we will own that Target. We would have owned that McDonald's. We would have owned that Wendy's. That Wendy's is not ours. That's other people getting paper from that.
And it's one of those things I always think about. Also, it's like, well, we learned it from watching you guys
We
from
weren't
Tulsa,
learned it.
Oklahoma, Wilmington on Fire, Rosewood. It worked for you guys. What? We're not supposed to play by the same rule book?
Right. And that's what a lot of people say. They taught us how to react with that. We've seen, like, somebody sent me a message on Sunday after seeing my song, and they sent me all these pictures of when they were brutalizing us, even after slavery, but mainly when they were selling us and brutalizing us and raping our women, and they claimed that we smelled and if we smelled and stink so bad and looked so bad, why were you raping our women and having babies with them? Evidently, we weren't that bad, huh? So these are the things, like, are reminders of how could we get over that, especially when you never paid us back for that. You never paid our people back for that. We've been fighting, since the beginning of the time, since we came here. So it's no way we've ever been able to pull ourselves up by those bootstraps that they mentioned. And although we have a lot of us that are doing well now, and it's not the same, but it's still there. We still have so many people that can't afford healthcare. We have so many people that get locked up for simple tickets that normally would just go as a citation, but rather we get locked up for it. The crack game, that the same amount that was powder for white criminals, they would get slaps on wrist. And it's crazy. When I first moved back to North Carolina, I looked up in the neighborhoods, I'm trying to see what was good, because you see a lot, if you Google certain things, like people that get sexual assaulted in neighborhoods. And I was surprised to see the numbers, right? And I started doing research on it, and I'm like, why did this Black person who did this type of assault get 10, 15, 20 years, and this white person that did the exact same crime, they got sometimes probation, 60 days, 9 months the most, 2 years the most, really. And I couldn't believe these same crimes were being treated so drastically different. So that's when I really started, I started waking up long before that, but certain things that triggered me just to start reading and getting more involved in what I'm actually seeing. And it's just bothered me to my core, seeing this stuff.
Now, moving forward, like, what do you think would make the biggest impact as far as making these changes? I mean, you see some, like, with the protests and different things, but what do you think we really need to do in order to see that change? Since you are getting more involved, what different things have you got involved in to help see that move the needle forward in that sense too?
Well, I want to really get back more involved with the community. My brother and a friend of mine named Scott Lamont, Scotty Barnes, he has this thing called Catch the Kite. And it's like people that comes home from prison that, they're trying to prepare an avenue for them to walk down. So I'm trying to get more involved in policies and procedures that it's going to help them, as well as just other people that, like our teenagers that are being really set up to fail, or as they call it, the school highway to the penitentiary. They set you up. They know you're gonna set you up because they know that you won't make it through high school, and that highway that they set you up on is leading you right to the penitentiary. So we want to try and get something put together where we can actually lead these kids and get avenues for them to spend their time in doing that, rather than just getting involved in certain situations that we know will be a downfall, something pivotal that could a loss of life, jail time, or felonies. And with these felonies, like, one thing that I've always talked about, even with my son, like a lot of these kids who get caught with these gun charges, right? Why do you do that to yourself? Because at 18 years old, you can get you a rifle in North Carolina. At 21 years old, you can own your own pistol, right? Why don't you wait? But our OGs that really hadn't been teaching that to these youngsters to try to lead them into an avenue of getting that right. Because if you really want to be an OG and lead these kids that are in the streets the right way, you tell them these things. That way they can carry legally and not have to worry about going to jail for 3 to 5 years for just getting caught with a gun. Why put yourself in that situation? And a lot of times we just haven't been teaching our kids the right thing. Whites have taught their kids how to hold and shoot guns since they're 5, 6, 7 years old. And I'm not saying that we have to do that, but we at least have to put them in a mind frame to know the legal system and how to stay out of it. And if we're not teaching them to how to survive out here and stay free, that means we're failing at what we're doing. If you consider yourself an OG or somebody that's in the street or somebody that's a leader, and you're not telling these kids on how to act, how to stay away from the penitentiary and stay away from, you can't always stay away from them because little things that we know systemically just happens to us.
Right.
However, if you're smart enough to know certain tactics, you know how to deal with them. You try to learn how to talk to them in a certain way where you're not always combative, because they push your triggers. We all have certain triggers that they'll push. And if you're young and immature and don't have the wisdom, you react a certain way. And that's what they're looking for. They can't wait till you say something the wrong way to bust you upside your head. That's what they do. It's historically, that's what happens. They killed our most peaceful leader that we've ever had, which is Martin Luther King, right? You can't get any more peaceful than that.
No.
Colin Kaepernick, he kneeled, and they called them sons of bitches, right? It's not so much more that you can do peacefully. So when they uprise and do these things, I don't support burning down buildings and tearing up storefronts and things of that nature. However, I understand because these young people have had enough. They're the ones that's getting locked up. They're the ones that's losing their lives.
And I would also say that each generation, we're telling them our horror stories and things that to prevent. And so they just like our parents taught us about Jim Crow. And so we're telling them about Rodney King and different things that we saw and so on. And so they've been hearing all these stories from firsthand experiences from their grandparents, from their uncles, from their aunts, or from their parents, that when it got to their turn, they're like, well, I'm not going to just stay idly by. I'm not, not saying that we didn't uprise, but I think with each generation, they get stronger and stronger on how they're going to fight back. And so these poor kids were without school, without a job, without anything to do since March, basically. And they've already seen all these other people die at police hands. And so at this point, it was like a champagne bottle in that sense.
Absolutely.
Where they were just all these things. They're scared of coronavirus. That's hitting the Black community harder. And so now we have a seen enemy that's hitting that's hitting Black people harder. It's like, well, what did you expect? They're going to react. You've taken away every opportunity that they've had up until this point away from them.
Right.
And they've just been sitting playing video games or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
that's right.
And watching these movies where they feel like vigilantes. And it's just, I think it's so important that as artists that we try to paint a narrative that shows the humanity that we have, because that might help change the story as far as for other people who don't have any experience with Black people, who are just going based on Fox News or the CO name we won't say again.
Right.
Those are her initials, I'm talking about.
Right.
But they're getting that version of us. And so when they see these other versions, they're like, oh, where did she come from? Or hey, or, they don't get it. And so I love that you created that song about Mama, I Can't Breathe, because it just reconfirms we're human.
Right.
They're doing this to Americans. Like, if this was a white American, the NRA would be up in arms with all of these situations in that sense. So it's just the idea that we have to defend ourselves. We don't have that unified voice, even with the police having the police unions to help them. Like who are we? Who's helping us? Like we have the NAACP, but there's not a distinct leader who's kind of saying, this is what we need to do. This is how we make change. And I think you brought it when you were bringing up about the Catch the Kite, how important that is, even on a local level, to make sure that we're voting for the judges and the district attorneys and the different people who are coming up for elections, that are going to make sure that our voices are heard and seen, and that we're not just tokens for their photo to prove that they're diverse and they're listening to our voices, but they're actually doing the work and listening to us. And I'm so
Absolutely.
happy that you were my guest today. And I just want to make sure that people do know what steps can we do, because not everyone can go out to protest. Not every, I have even myself, I can't go because I have a daughter that's high risk, so I can't put that risk on my family.
Right.
But I think with what you're doing as far as with your song and so on, it's giving that voice. It's giving, because there was a couple of weeks ago, there was a young boy who went viral for his song about the experience.
Okay.
And when I heard your song, it just reminded me of that same situation. Like, don't just listen to the song because it's catchy and because it's a movement right now. Listen to it and realize that this is real life for us.
Right.
And you're putting that in a song that people might listen to all over the place, Iowa, Indiana, or somewhere,
Right.
and start realizing, oh, this is what they've been dealing with.
Right.
This is, like it gives that humanity to what's been going on, not just what they're seeing on CNN with the fires. And then there's all this proof that we're not even starting the fires, but
Right.
whatever.
And and that's the part that I really wanted people to catch, is the lyrical content that I was able to put into this song, because this is what we live.
Mm-hmm.
And when we heard George screaming for his mama, that just, you can't get it when a grown man cries for his mother. If you can't feel that pain,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
like I can't take seeing a grown man cry. Mm-mm. When I know it's the sincere grown man crying. He'll have everybody that's watching him cry, because that's not something that we are accustomed to doing. We try to be tough and be that soldier. And I had to realize one day that crying is not going to make you soft. Right. Sometimes it just needs to be let out, right? But again, when you are calling for your mama, that's a whole nother level of pain. That's a whole nother level of what you're dealing with, that we can't even put into words at times. So when God gave me that song at 3:30 in the morning, I didn't know exactly how it was going to come out, but I know it had me walking around my kitchen writing this song downstairs, just nonstop. I couldn't stop. I couldn't sit down. I just kept going. And after I played it back in my head, because when I write songs, I use two phones. So I use one phone to so I won't forget my melodies, and I use the other phone to write the lyrics, and listen to the track. So I'm walking around with these phones, just trying to sing it into the phone so I won't forget, because I know it's late. And I don't want to wake up in the morning and forget everything that I've done. So I've learned not to do that anymore. So I record myself on my phone like a dictation. And when I was playing it back, every line that I was coming up with, I knew that it was God sent, because it was saying everything that we all feel and what we've all been through. And like I said, when I got attacked in New York by these 5 police officers, they told me that I fit the description of somebody carrying a gun. And I was actually walking to the hospital. I was sick that day. I had left my apartment, and I was living on 108th Manhattan Avenue. And, I was living with a friend of mine, buddy Kent Falcon and Adrian Hinton. And I left and walked. It was like a 4-block walk that I needed to get to the hospital. And as I'm walking, I saw cops come from out of nowhere. And they just jacked me up, beat me up. And then when they realized I didn't have a gun on me, and they just started laughing, and they cursed me out, called me names, and I was like, give me your, of course I was like, give me your badge, and they were like, here you go, mother, you know what I mean? They were, it was wild. They don't care. It was like no respect, none whatsoever, even though they knew they were wrong. They don't care. And a lot of their mentality. They don't care.
No.
They're like, whatever.
Why would they care? Because
They can get away with it.
I mean, if you have
they've
that
had,
story, how many other people have that story before they got to you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So that's what they do. I mean, and that's what a lot of them do. And like I said, we know all cops aren't like that.
Right.
But the problem is the bad cops haven't been held accountable for these actions. So it continues. It's been an ongoing, historical, brutal pain that we as Black people and have been doing for years. And now we've been seeing it happen to our women as well because it's on video, even though we know it's been happening since the beginning as well. But even when we started capturing this on video, they still would try to paint it like, oh, well, he should have just listened.
Oh,
yeah. And one line in the song where, these cops would say this on many of the videos that you would see, stop resisting. And they still beating you behind while they're doing it. So it's almost like they're beating you, screaming, stop resisting for the video. And if you're doing this, because there's no way, no man can stand still and get beat. It's impossible. Yeah. You can't do it. Even if you're chained up, handcuffs, tied up like a hog, you cannot be still getting beat because you're going to try to block or whatever. Yeah. And many, I would say thousands of videos out there where they are doing this. They'll tell you stop resisting. You're not resisting. You're trying to protect your neck.
Yeah, that's it.
You're trying to get home. It's no way they're hitting you with billy clubs and kicking you and elbowing you and choking you. It's no way you can sit still and take that. It's impossible. I would like to see one of us try it on them and see if they can take it.
And I feel like they say that because they know the recording, or that's what they can write down, stop resisting. You know what I mean? Like they can use that against you for their side. I kept saying stop resisting and he wasn't. He wasn't resisting.
You look at many of our arrests. That's always one of them up there. That's always one of the charges. It could be one simple thing from a citation and they'll hit you with 3 other charges. Resisting, disorderly conduct. I mean, they'll add all these other charges to these. And we all know that for many years, they were just planting drugs on us, even though we didn't have them, or elevating these charges on you, saying what you possibly had and just adding to it. We know that they were lying, but we couldn't prove it. And many of us don't even have the means to go to court and get bail. So many of us are left in jail for 2 and 3 years without even a court date. So it's free labor for them.
Yeah, free labor. That part. Oh, it is already 7:04.
Cool.
The time goes by so quickly.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Well, I'm going to have you back because we have to bring your son with you as well. And we want to see that video. I want to make sure we have you back and you can tell us how the video shoot went and everything else, because I'm sure you're getting ready to blow up. So I have to make sure I get you in my calendar before you get too big to fit me in.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just want everybody, if they can, just, continue sharing this Mama I Can't Breathe raw video that I have on Facebook, as well as the actual song that's on YouTube. And I see those numbers are rising too. So I was surprised because I hadn't shared much of that particular YouTube video, but I see the numbers are already picking up. So it's doing its own thing. So I'm blessed and fortunate that I realize people are sharing it. It means a lot to me. And I know it's going to mean a lot to people who can't really speak to it. And it actually speaks for all of us, that when we're in these situations, these are the things that happen. We have to go in and talk to our children about being stopped, to try to help them have a guide to get home. We just want you to make it home. Yeah. And also to look at us and say, hey, before you beat me, ask about my family. Ask about who I am.
And that was probably the saddest part with listening to, the video in Atlanta, was that he told him about his children. He told him about the birthday party. He went in describing everything about him that should have hit their heartstrings about him, who he is, and it didn't matter.
But you could tell that officer who was wanting to arrest him his mind was made up already of what he wanted to do. He wanted to arrest him, even though, you know, they're going to say, well, he had to drive to this parking lot, right? Impaired. Fine, right? The man was out telling you he was just at his kid's birthday party.
And his girl dropped him off.
He had some drinks, like most of us